And now, marine weather around Alaska.
We'll start off this segment with the temporary change notice. The aviation weather and marine YouTube recordings will be unavailable on the following weekend dates: Saturday, June 8th and Sunday, June 9th, Saturday, June 15th and Sunday, June 16th. Some or all aviation and marine graphics will also be unavailable on the web during this time. Surface maps and the general weather segment will remain available. Normal production will continue on weekdays. And thank you for your understanding. Moving on to tonight's weather, no big storms on the chart here coming in for the next few days, actually. A weak system out here with some rain. And not much of a wind producer, though, for the Alaska Peninsula. Drying out over the Panhandle, drying out over the interior. And for tomorrow, some showers here through the west central part of the state, increasing sunshine, North Gulf Coast, southeast coast, all the way up across the eastern interior. Stronger system down here to the north weakens as it pushes northward, but it'll bring some rain into southern Cook Inlet, definitely Kodiak Island, extending westward into Bristol Bay. Far north is probably the Yukon Delta, definitely the Alaska Peninsula. Coastal water forecast there on the south coast, east winds 10 knots. Central coast east winds 15 knots, and the north coast east winds 10 knots with seas 5 feet. Inside waters, mostly north to northeast breezes at about 10 knots or so, with seas pretty slight at 2 feet. And for Saturday, south coast, southeast winds 20 knots as that front from the south begins to approach the area there. They'll kick the winds up a little bit. Same thing for Clarence Strait, south winds increasing to 20 knots, seas building to 5 feet. And east winds 15 knots on the central coast, northeast of 15. Lynn Canal, northeast of 10, northeast 10 also for Stevens Passage. Eastern North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound for Friday, east winds of 15 knots, otherwise a 20-knot wind here farther to the west. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories there for east winds. And northeast winds 15 to 20 for Cook Inlet. And then for Saturday, north to northeast wind, 10 to 15 knots in Cook Inlet. Small craft advisories here continue for Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands, up to 30 knots for the Barren Islands, northeast 25 for the western North Gulf Coast. Light and variable for Prince William Sound, and north to northeast 15 to 20 for the east side, eastern North Gulf Coast areas. Kodiak Island, east winds 25 knots Friday. East to southeast winds 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and Bristol Bay easterlies at 20. For the day Saturday, throw some gales in, possibly as high as 35 knots here for Shelikof Strait. Otherwise, Bristol Bay northeast at 25, and north to northeast winds 15 to 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. On Alaska Island, variable winds at 10 knots tomorrow, so really laying down there. Otherwise, north to northeast winds at 15 to 20 knots for the central Aleutians. Western Aleutians here, east to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots. And then for Saturday, western Aleutians, north to northwest winds at 15 to 25 knots. North 25 for the central Aleutians. Fox Islands, north to northeast winds 15 knots. Kuskokwim Delta Coast for tomorrow, small craft advisories, east winds at 25 knots. Otherwise, pretty light here for St. Lawrence Island, east wind at 10 knots, and northeast 15 for St. Matthew Island, and St. Paul and St. George, east of 15. Northeast 20 for the Pribilofs on Saturday, north 25 there for St. Matthew Island, northeast 15 for the Yukon Delta Coast, and Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island, looking at north winds at about 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea Coast, Friday, variable winds at 10. East 15 for the central and western Arctic coast. Chukchi Sea, south to southeast at 15 knots. Then on Saturday, we'll swing around to the north here for the Chukchi Sea at 15 to 25 knots. East at 15 for the western Arctic coast. And the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, they're looking at light east to northeast winds at about 10 knots.